Hi, my name is Michael Chikeen. The smartest people I've met have one common belief, that us silly humans really don't know much. For example, we still don't know why planes stay in the air, or how Tylenol or even gravity works. Yeah, gravity. Look it up. In today's distracted, clickbait, misinformation age, I wish we could all be less certain, more humble, and a lot more curious. Admittedly, I've been known to struggle with all three. So no more, no less, this show is my attempt to be that change. Thanks for joining me, and here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to No More, No Less. I'm Michael Chikeen, your host, and today in the virtual studio I have with me one of my favorite people, Andreas Kambanis. Andreas is the founder and CEO of Nibble Apps, one of the top three food and drink apps in the iOS store. Always doing cool things with that, so please feel free to check out Fitman Cook and Meal Prep Pro. They'll help you get your life in order. And and today we're going to be covering all things travel. Andreas and I have done always more trips than we think together, and we have another one coming up. And so we thought, why not do an episode on the joy and everything surrounding travel? So Andreas, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much, Mike. Pleasure to be here again. And I think anytime we organize trips together, we always seem to get the dates wrong, which is always just also a worry. It's like, oh, you meant July 2013?
That was the worst one by a lot. I think
Yeah,
I think as one of us had booked the flights as well, and then
yeah,
we sent the details to the other person, and we're like, "What is this? What
yeah,
what did you just do?"
yeah. You think you get good at this stuff after a number of years, no, still useless.
Yeah, that's when you're trying to plan stuff virtually, and no one's really asking the important questions.
That's right.
The because I think you and I, even when we met, was a bit of a travel thing. So like you guys came to Barcelona, part of an entrepreneur group we were both a part of, and I was living there. I just moved there for my first full year. I think I'd been there for 3 months, and you're always up for a bit of a scoot to another country.
Yeah.
You were in the UK. And that kind of started the basis of our friendship started with travel, and it kind of seemed to evolve from there.
Yeah. We had quite a funny introduction. It was definitely like, who is this guy that's just like taking us to all these best gelato places in Barcelona? And yeah, little did I know at the time that we'd become such close friends. But it was quite funny, yeah, because I remember that you were kind of introed as like, oh yeah, like Mike seems like he's quite busy. I'm not sure if we'll get to see him much. And then yeah, suddenly we were just spending all this time with you, and I was like, this guy's awesome, and I've never met somebody like this before. So yeah, definitely one of the definitely an awesome start to our travel,
Yeah, it's funny.
frequently travel-based relationship.
The gelato story is actually, you're not being facetious. I remember we were by the beach and you guys really wanted some gelato, and you're going to go to this ragtag tourist spot, and I was like, hold on. Can you guys, if I pay for the taxi, can we just go to a better spot, please?
Yeah. And the whole taxi ride, you were just describing how good it is.
Yeah. I felt like I had to justify that cab ride.
Yeah, the equivalent for me is to talk about how good this feta is that I found somewhere. And the equivalent
Right.
for the Italian is like, you have to try this gelato and look at this one and look at that one, and this place does this, and like, your face lights up when we're in there. Of course, now most of our adventures are looking for the best pistachio-based meals and treats and
I had a
stuff.
pistachio cheesecake yesterday that I still have to send you a photo from.
Amazing.
Yeah. In fact, for people listening, so Andreas is a Greek Brit, I guess you'd call it, right? Like Italian,
Sure.
Canadian, Greek, British. And so I do always appreciated when we are traveling that we have similar standards for food. Like if we're looking for a good meal, like it doesn't ever have to be fine dining, but like we're going to put in a little more effort to make sure it's not garbage and it's going to be an enjoyable meal. And I've always appreciated. I've learned, like, honestly, on every trip, you say something, and I'm like, I'm in the right place.
For sure. I think an absolute highlight is when we went to Italy and your nonna prepared what can only be described as like a medieval feast. It was so big, and it was just like food after like plate after plate of food, and it was all so good. I think I'd never eaten so much in my life, and I was almost ready to die. And then she was like, "Gelato."
And for those listening, everyone's always heard the tale of like the Italian nonna that will overfeed everybody, but this woman. So both sides of my family are from the same region, and so the other side knows one side knows the other side just through my family that lives in Canada, and this aunt Nonna that you met, like my dad's side of the family is always talking about that this woman feeds us too much food. Like, so even amongst the Italians, she has like an Olympic level legend for overfeeding people. And you ate all of us under the table, and that, I think you and I will be 85 years old and we'll be speaking about that lunch. Like, there were two kids 25 that were lying on the couch who'd already given up. I was still going, and you're like got a smile on your face, and you're like, yeah, gelato would be great. Yeah, that'd be great. I would love some of that.
Yeah. She's a wonderful person.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, so to get into kind of some of the ideas that we had before getting into this, because travel is such a really important part of both our lives, and I try to stay a little bit more grounded now in Barcelona, which I've been enjoying. But one thing that you mentioned on WhatsApp that I think we should talk about is how when someone chooses a destination and how that relates to the goals that people have. And I think that was super, super insightful. And I don't think I've ever thought of it like that so intentionally. Because if people are going away to, let's say, if you want to do a yoga retreat, you're not going to New York City. If if you want to go and party, like, you know what I mean, like that's probably not the time to go on a safari. And so, like, how have you planned some of your trips? How you think about intentionally versus like a goal you've had?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I'll speak about a recent trip. So recently we went to India and Nepal with my wife for our honeymoon, technically. But yeah, we've been working on Meal Prep Pro for probably close to 6 years at this point. And we were kind of I don't know if I fully agree with the term burnout, but we were kind of at that stage where you just can't really see like a path forward, and you're just very tired of it, and you're just very sort of like it's becoming quite exhausting. You've just been going at the same problem for a long time, and especially in the last couple of years, we kind of haven't had really big breakthroughs with it. So we were at a point where we were both a little bit exhausted, let's say, by the business that we were running. And we were talking about that at the start of the year, and we were sort of reflecting on the fact, you never know how many more years you have in your life, and you never know, what point something might come along that might stop you being able to do these kind of long distance trips. So we started looking and thinking about destinations, and I think one of the reasons that we picked India is just because it's so different to other places in the world, where you get such a culture shock and everything is so new and everything is like, you kind of just don't know like how you're going to get around and what are you going to eat, and what's going on. Like, everything is just this kind of wonderful new experience. So it served the purpose that we were looking for really well, where we were like, we want something that is going to just stop us thinking about our work, and just get us into a new headspace where we can get some separation from work. So India was really perfect for that. Now, let's say if instead of that, if we'd gone to Australia, let's say, which again, amazing destination, but really not that different in many ways to our lives here in Lisbon. You would probably go there, rent a car, go get some like blueberry pancakes for breakfast, get a nice cappuccino. Like, you're gonna be able to communicate with everybody in English. It's not gonna sort of give you that kind of shock to get your head out of this system of like work, 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 work. So that's where I think try to match up your destination a little bit with with kind of what you're trying to get out of that particular trip. And I always think that yeah, if it's kind of different in your early 20s. If you just want to go party, by all means, like go to Ibiza or wherever, but you're maybe not going to get some of those like breakthroughs, I guess.
Right.
If you pick that as your destination, there's only so much you're gonna yeah, like I don't know, just meditate on life if you're just partying it up with your buds.
Right. Yeah, it's really when you're talking about that, there's a few things I thought about. One is that like I haven't been to any really new places recently. Like we're doing a hiking trip soon, and I will always go back there. I don't care how many times. Maybe different parts of that same region of Italy. And then July, I'm in Canada, and so it makes me think like, okay, maybe for next year or later this year, I need to plan more of a unique experience to take me out of my head because I know all these places or whatever. And the other is like you said, like the partying versus like you guys wanted to check out and have some breakthroughs, and it's very unlikely you're gonna have a breakthrough when you're hungover and a pizza for the next day. And I've equated it to like even my assisted MDMA experience because you have people that have taken MDMA 400 times just to go to festivals, and they'll deplete their serotonin to the base level. But if you're taking it and you're going inward and thinking about things, well, then your mind has a chance to maybe teach you something, and then you can integrate those things into your life. And I don't think people ever really consciously think of that because I know you do a lot of travel that is just like really like experiential. I want to see new stuff. I want to experience new things. I'm along the same lines where I think the days of going to like party with your friends ended a long time ago for travel. I wanted to just go see some fun stuff and like hang out with people that I really like. And in that, you're not just in your house or on your computer or talking to employees, or your boss if you're just working remotely. And so you can maybe think about things a little differently. And I think even COVID did that for people because everything changed so quickly that all of a sudden you're in an environment that even though it is your home, you're forced to think differently because the world around you has all of a sudden changed within a couple months. And do you remember ever going on specific trips that on the way home or when you got home, you had a lot more things brewing that like just came up that you didn't even know that you were thinking about?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think this recent trip is definitely the best example of that. I think in the sense of yeah, kind of. I think I think as well when you're in the day to day, and it's so hard to see beyond that because the day to day has this habit of just sucking you in, right? So it's like you try to think about, well, what do I want, a year from now, 5 years from now? How would I like things to be different? And it's so hard. Like you kind of have glimpses of that day to day, and some of these ideas might be in your mind, like for us, it was, oh, it'd be wonderful if we could communicate better, for example, as a couple and when we work together as well.
Right.
And, we've spoken about this together before and it's come up and we've kind of spoken about it, but then, the day to day has a habit of just like sucking you back into what you were doing before you had that conversation. It's quite hard to break free of that and going in a new direction. And the travel really provided that sort of point of separation where you're like, okay, it gave you some space to think about these things. You're hiking up a mountain, you've got these beautiful surroundings. I'm not saying necessarily that you sort of necessarily have to be, sat on a beautiful spot in a mountain looking at a beautiful view and like
Right.
sit there with a journal and like, I am going to solve this problem, because I think sometimes you can't, I don't think that's how our brains work. I don't think you can just sort of sit there and like force it to like think about something and solve something, but giving it some space and some time and just like enjoying yourself being in nature, it gives the brain time to work through these things that it's been thinking about. And yeah, for me personally, it definitely took a couple of weeks in India before finally I wasn't thinking about the day to day of business.
Hmm.
Because I remember remarking to my wife a week or two into this saying, I can't believe it, but I'm still thinking about, oh, I need to update that database and I need, did I message this person about this? And what am I going to do about this other like day to day problem? So it definitely took a couple of weeks to finally get enough space from it where your brain was able to work on some of the bigger things, and work on those subconsciously over a certain amount of time. So yeah, it's quite interesting because I think previously I'd have thought like, no, this thing is bothering me, the communication with my wife or something in the business or the big picture of the business. I need to like, go sit down with my notebook or just like think.
Right.
But it doesn't really always work like that. Sometimes you just gotta let the brain work its magic and come up with its eureka moment. And definitely travel and choice of destination, I think, are kind of quite cool ways of getting to that result.
Yeah, I've definitely found that as well. Like to just to shake your marbles a little bit, so you're on a different path. Because I can imagine like even communication patterns, even with employees or significant other, that when it's the same person, there's a whole bunch of things clearly wrapped in that. Like even if you're trying to change communication with a parent or with a friend, like we always fall back into defaults. Like we have to be really conscious of being like, okay, now I'm going to communicate differently with this
Mm,
person, and you have to be conscious until it's like I've been playing a lot of tennis the last year, and so what I've even realized, to use a sports analogy, is that like I'm paying attention to so many different things when I'm trying to make these shots, and slowly as I'm doing that, I can let some of those things I've learned go on autopilot, and I can focus
mm,
on other things. But if I don't think about the things like my grip, having my racket all the way back, my swing all the way through, like all these things, well, then I'm just going to default to the way I've always played, which is not knowing how to play. And so
sure.
I look at communication the same way, that until these communication patterns are strong, like we have to be so
Mm,
intentional. And then that's only one part of the equation. Like if we're being intentional and the other person is not being intentional, they're being more reactive, then it's easy for us to feel like we're failing. Like if I'm playing tennis and I'm doing the things right, but the other person is just like crushing me with all these shots. I'm like, oh, am I getting worse? Like, what's happened? So it's like it's a two-way back and forth that I think maybe being in a different environment, takes
mm.
all of us out of our, like you said, out of our day to day. We can be like, that's why we keep arguing over this little thing. That's why this employee is reacting how I say these things, and it's
For sure.
yeah, like, and
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question about India, because like just it seems like you guys weren't sick at all on that trip, and honestly, I think it's a miracle. Like,
Yeah, it's funny. Everybody we said, oh, we're going to India. They were like, oh, Delhi belly.
yeah, at least one
Uh,
person out of the duo going always gets, and everyone says deathly sick.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. It's quite famous, I think, for that. And yeah, like it's funny because we were quite conscious of that going into it, and we went to a travel clinic here in Lisbon, and they gave us various vaccinations, and they were like, don't eat, fresh leaf salad, and only sort of roasted vegetables, or all this kind of typical advice. But it was quite funny because then in our first day in Delhi, everything went out the window because we found this food cart, and it was like full of people around it, and it just looked so delicious and so interesting, and it just like all the advice we received just went out the window. Like we have to try this out, and we were eating it, and we were like halfway through eating it, we were like, this is probably with like tap water. This is probably with like local tap water. Like we're gonna be so ill tomorrow, but it was kind of too late, and this thing was too delicious and stuff. But I think anyway, we were fine as it happens. But it is funny how yeah, you have these like strong ideas about be careful, be careful, be careful, and you get there and you're like, this looks delicious, and your mind's just like, I don't care.
I feel like you pulled that from a Simpsons episode. Like that sounds
Yeah.
like Homer before he goes away gets this advice, and he's like, "Oh look, a donut in the sewer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have one of those." That sounds great.
Yeah, yeah. No, so we did pretty well. We only got ill. We only got ill once. Yeah, like, and that was fairly badly ill for a couple of days.
That's honestly, that
But
sounds
we,
like best case scenario. Like
yeah.
more people than not that I know that have gone to India has been like, my husband or wife or friend was
Hmm.
sick for a week and we
Hmm.
thought they were going to be in the hospital or we went to the hospital. So if you guys were sick for
Okay.
2 days, maybe it's that
Yeah,
Portuguese tap water that's
yeah.
solidified your digestive tract.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we did follow some common sense stuff. Like, we were careful that, okay, the places that we pick to eat, make sure a lot of people are eating in there so that there's like a good turnaround with the food. We weren't really, apart from a couple of times when we stayed in nice hotels, we were not really eating like fresh leaf salads and stuff that had been washed in the tap water.
Right.
So for the most part, we were following, the sensible advice that you get, and maybe we got a little bit lucky. I think it's just kind of part of it. You just got to kind of accept.
Right.
We were there for a month. It's probably going to happen once, and it did. And you kind of just accept it. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't. I think in the past that would have maybe stopped me going there, being like, oh, I really don't want to get ill and stuff. But it was just such a beautiful, interesting destination and just so different. And all the food was just so incredible, that you kind of forget, that you do carry a little bit of a risk, but it's just the reward is so huge that it's really worth it.
Right. That's great. Yeah, there's a friend that's been trying to get me to come to India for years, and I think her family's like in. I think they're really very well off, and because I see like Instagram and they're here and there, and she's like, well, if you come, then I'll be your guide, and I'm like, if I ever go, I probably will take her advice over because she's always been beating that drum, and I'm kind of like, yeah, but like, are your hospitals nice? Because I'll probably see the inside of one of those. I'm just messing about, but your photos, and like there was someone else, a friend of mine, another British couple from Barcelona that were in India around the same time, and both you guys were the first time I was thinking like, oh, shit, maybe this would be a pretty great trip. Maybe just go to some of these. Like I probably wouldn't do it the way you did it. You backpacked and went from like India to Pakistan to Nepal, right? And you were
Mhm.
doing like 15 days of hiking. And how was the hiking journey?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The hiking was fun. Yeah, because I think you can do, so the circuit that we did is called the Annapurna
Okay.
circuit. And you can do it, I think, in as little as a week, or you can kind of extend it out as much as you want. Some people are kind of pushing themselves and getting through it faster, or if you've got a little bit more time, you can take it more slow and you can do side trips and things like that. But it's a really interesting hike because, at the highest point that you hike, it's at 5,400 meters, which is higher than, the highest mountain that we have, here in Europe.
Wow.
So it's kind of fascinating to be at those altitudes and to see how your body reacts to that altitude, and to see, like, am I kind of able to do this? And yeah, and the whole time you're just surrounded by really beautiful, scenery. And I think it's a really nice setup because basically you take your backpack and you've got, your clothes and the stuff that you'll need, but you don't have to take, a tent, you don't have to take food, you don't have to take a camping stove and stuff like that. So it's really nice because it's really accessible as well. It's kind of like, how you learnt how to walk when you were 4 years old? Well, it's like it's the same thing. It's just more of that
Wow.
over the course of 2 weeks. So it's kind of nice because it's like you don't have to be of a particular skill level, or you don't have to have like done a course in like how do I do this. It's kind of open to everybody, which I really like about it.
Hmm.
And the setup is great because you hike as much as you want during the day, and you've got all these places along the way that you can stop at, these tea houses. And the tea houses will provide you with, so you generally will only pay for your food, and then you get your accommodation for free as well. Because we were talking to somebody, and they were like, how can you afford to do this? And you're like, we were literally spending like 20, 30 euros a day max,
Wow.
doing this hike and stuff. Um, but yeah, it was constantly beautiful. The scenery was constantly changing. You get to be really high up in these amazing mountains. Yeah, Nepalese people are super friendly as well, and it's really nice for meeting other hikers as well because you'll generally get up fairly early, say 6 a.m., set off, and then by sort of 1 p.m., 2 p.m., you'll be done for the day. So then you're in these really nice tea houses in these beautiful parts of the world, and you just get chatting to all the people around you. I definitely the one downside is I did get a little bit competitive at certain points, like trying to like you like I don't know what brought this out in me, but this we were doing this one hike through this one section up to Licho Lake, and we met these three Belgian guys and their guide. And myself and Una sat down and we were getting some lunch at the same spot as these guys were. And we were sort of chatting to them and we were chatting to the guide. And we were like, oh, how much longer do you think it is to get to the Tilicho base camp? And he was like, oh, well, for you guys, 3 or 4 hours. And we were like, for you guys.
Big mistake. Big
Yeah,
mistake.
yeah. It's just like it just sparked something in us, and then yeah, we were just like on a mission, and we were powering it, and we like caught up with them, and we were about to overtake them, and then we were like, "What are we doing?"
You guys are jogging.
Yeah, we were like, "What are we doing? We're not here to like prove three Belgian guys and their guide wrong that we can like more hardcore hike than them. We're like here to enjoy ourselves." So yeah, we definitely had to sort of pause and be like, yeah, like really stop competing with people. You're just here to enjoy
But the important part
the
of that
hike.
story is how long did it take you to make it to that base camp?
Definitely less than 3 to 4 hours.
That's exactly what I figured.
Yeah, yeah. So it was quite funny, and like it was funny because the people that we made friends with were like the most hardcore people. So we would like wake up, start the hike, and then we would catch up with some of the other people, or we would see them like having they've gone to the top and they're on the way back down. So we'd be chatting to them, and we were like, oh, like how was it? And they were like, yeah, we were the first people up there, so we were with the guide, like putting in our walking poles in the snow to like carve out and find out like where the route was. Basically, they were like the people that were clearing the path for like the rest of the people, and we were like, we just not hang out with these people. They're setting the bar like way too high. I
Yeah.
don't want to be hanging out with the people that are like the first out of bed in the morning and like figuring out where the route is because it's been like snowing and
You're like, I don't want to be on expert level in Nepal.
yeah. Here to enjoy myself, I'm not here to do this. But yeah, it's funny because I was saying to you that those are the guys that lived in Italy in South Tyrol,
Yeah.
Tyrol, and because we're heading there next week, and so I was stupidly I asked him for a hike recommendation, and what I got back was like a 10-day hike. I was like, I was thinking more something I could do on a leisurely stroll in the afternoon.
Yeah, our goals for our trip are pretty clear. Like we're gonna do a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
a good hike in the morning, and then the rest is gonna be eating and jokes.
yeah, for sure. I think
Like
I should have specified more. Like, I'm looking for a hike with maximum pistachio treats. Good food spots along the way, super chill. Uh,
you're like, if I'm too tired to throw good one-liners, I don't want to go.
yeah, I do thoroughly enjoy from our last trip together in Italy. We were doing you had a different hike in mind, and I quite like this about the way we travel as well, is that we're both kind of happy to do our own thing. We don't feel like we're here together, we have to do like every single thing together. And you were kind of like, oh, there's this area in my mind that I really want to go and visit, and we were like, oh, cool. So me and another friend that was with us, we were like, okay, we're going to go and do this hike. So we kind of just split off and we're doing our own thing. And so me and Dave, we were on this hike, and then we came across this sign that was like, route closed or something like that. And we were like, Oh, it's probably just because it's been winter and like they probably haven't taken down the sign like let's keep going. So it's like mistake number one. And then and then we're hiking along and we come across this huge where there's been this huge landslide. So the path is just gone. There is no path. There's just a landslide.
Oh.
And then we were like, oh, that's probably why that close sign was there. Maybe, we're like, I reckon we could make it through. So we like keep going, and while we were doing this, going through this landslide section, um, my phone must have downloaded a WhatsApp message from you, and we got to the other end of this landslide section, and we sat down, and we were like, that was kind of hairy. And then I looked at my phone, and there was like a voice message from you on WhatsApp, and I hit play, and all I can hear is just hailstones like all around you, and it was so loud. And you're like, "Guys, get some shelter because where I am, like all hell's breaking loose." And there's just all I could hear in this audio is like, I've probably still got this clip, but it's just the hailstones. I don't know if you'd made it back to the car at that point or something, but you're just kind of warning us like, "Do not continue."
That day, because I went because I think we had done 3 days hiking in a row, and I know you guys wanted a real like hardcore hike for that for that trip, and so even when you're like, oh, we're gonna do like a 5 or 6 hour hike, and I'm like, tell me how that goes. and and then because the day before I did like a 3 hour hike and you guys went some bike riding and that was really amazing for me. And there was I hope we can go there this time because it should be open now that it's June. So there's a spot in South Tyrol where you drive, you park, and then you take a lift up to the top of this, and it's very small. It's like the top of this rock face, and you can look over the entire area. And I missed it the first time I was there. I missed it last year, and so I
Mm.
hope that this time that we can check that out because I think you can start the hike from up there, or you can take a long hike and get there, and then take a lift
Mm.
a lift back. So I really wanted to go and see
That
that,
sounds amazing.
and so I drove there when you guys went on your death hike, and and then I got there, and obviously it was the end of it was still closed because it wasn't June yet, and so I was just sitting there, I probably on Instagram or whatever, and I see the rain start coming, and so I was leaving you a message probably from the car microphone, and so that's why it sounded, but it was awful. Like when I
Yeah.
got back to the Airbnb, I was sitting down and like feeling quite proud of myself. I'm watching Amazon. I'm seeing it rain. I'm like, these poor guys. Like, what are they gonna do? Like, well, they love the rain, so all right. But then when it started like really coming down and like lightning, then I was like, shit, they might die. This is not good. And I ended up finding you guys at the end when I came and picked you up, and you were like shivering inside of a random supermarket, and you're like, yeah, you just listed all the mistakes that you made along the way, and made for a good story, thankfully, instead of like a tragic tale.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was just like it's such a wonderful moment when we saw you just pull in with the car with like the towels and stuff. We were just like, oh, like we're saved. It really felt like we'd just been rescued off the Titanic, like it was really just like it was a wonderful, yeah, wonderful moment. Very, very funny. I mean, you got to be a bit bold sometimes with these trips, don't you? I suppose there's like a fine line between the end of that story being like, and then Mike rescued us and everything was wonderful, and they had to be rescued off the mountain, and
Or we never saw them again.
yeah, or that.
Yeah. They're part of the landslide now. No, but
Yeah.
one thing you said as well that I also do appreciate is like we can do separate things and we'll make the case for like someone else joining, but at a point we're like, okay, they actually really don't want to go, and that's good. Yeah, because I've been on trips as well, and this is so one of my first trips. Around Europe. This is when I was 24, and a good buddy of mine came with me, but he was really felt like he didn't want to do things that were on his own. He felt like we
Mm.
always had to go together. There was I don't know. There was a codependent travel nature in him at that point. And I remember our first stop was Amsterdam, and he really wanted to go see this Vincent van Gogh museum, which is supposed to be amazing. I've still never been, and he really wanted to go. And we had just landed. We turned around for a couple days, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go sit in that Vondel Park in Amsterdam. It looks amazing. You go to the museum and let me know how it is. And he just refused to do it. You know, he was really
Mm.
like adamant that I had to go. And if I didn't, then he came with me. And then
Mm.
for the rest of the trip, we kept meeting people that had been to that museum and were telling us how amazing it was. Some people bought prints, and he gave me shit for 2 months because he didn't go into that museum. And I'm like, dude, I don't care that I didn't go. But it was like this
Yeah.
ongoing thing that, like, even to this day makes me laugh. That like someone else, if they can't make their own decisions, they're blaming their travel partner because
Yeah.
they didn't go.
For sure. And it's interesting, yeah, because we were watching this show on, I think it's on the BBC, and it's called Race Across the World. And actually, the most recent series you'd be maybe interested in, they're doing a trip across Canada. And the premise of this show is to sort of do a trip, stopping off in different destinations on the way. And there's different like couples or like, or a dad and his daughter, and these couples are racing each other. There's like five couples, say, and they're racing each other across Canada or across Asia. And the idea is to get across without using any flights, without your phone, without any of that, for the price of what the airfare would be to do the same journey.
Cool.
So that's their budget basically. And it was quite funny because obviously it creates all these tensions, and of course it makes for great TV. Um, but there's this moment where obviously when you're traveling, there's a lot of moments where you have to kind of come to a decision together, and you don't have perfect information. Obviously, you just got to make a judgment call. And there was this like such a toxic sentence that like they say to each other all the time, which is like, okay, well, this is your decision. And so if it goes wrong, it's on you. And you're like, that's like the most toxic thing I've ever heard. Like,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like somebody has to make a call, and you might have different perspectives. Like definitely in India, there were times where I was like, I think we should book this train and do this, and Una's, my wife's thinking, oh no, like I think we should go and do this. And at some point, you've got to kind of go, okay, we don't have perfect information. Let's make a call on this, but I'm not going to hold it over your head if this doesn't work out, right? Like that's
Right.
such a critical thing to kind of acknowledge. But yeah, when I heard them say that to each other, I was like, is this how people think?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
But no,
because even if you're making those decisions, that sort of environment incentivizes nobody to make a decision,
right, right,
right?
right,
And
right,
it's
right, right.
I think it's easier to fall into that mindset when like nobody's sleeping,
Sure.
stress is super high, and then you're like, well, I feel awful, so this has to be someone's fault,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
For sure.
And then, but
You,
in travel, for sure, like I remember one of the best things that came out of that first trip that I did in Europe, and like even though he and I squabbled a lot trip as travelers do, like if it wasn't for him, I don't think I ever would have went on that trip. And there were so
yeah.
many amazing memories that we had on that trip, but what it really solidified in me was that I could basically choose my own destiny because
Mm,
like he was because I was a travel agent at that time, and I quit to went on this trip, and then found other work afterwards. But I think maybe he defaulted to me a lot to make a lot of these decisions, and
right.
begrudgingly I did. But I think it really instilled in me this ability to make decisions and to be able to improvise on this fly and be like, okay, we missed this train. Now, how do we solve this situation? And that problem solving, I really, really loved. Like, and
Mm,
I think even like on any trip when there's something to be figured out, for me
mm,
it's like a fun puzzle, right? Like if as long as it's
for
not like
sure.
a life or death sort of situation, I feel like okay, like how do we get out of this escape room called Europe?
Right,
You
right,
know?
for sure. No, 100%. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there was, yeah, the recent trip in the example, yeah, like we'd been on a long train ride, and I think we got into Delhi and we got in really late. And I was like, okay, we're pulling into this train station. I'll wait till we get outside, and then I'll order an Uber basically. And that yeah, they've got Uber now in India, so it's super easy for like short hopping around in a taxi. So I was like, oh, we'll get there. I'll pull out my phone. I'll order an Uber. And Una was my wife. She was like, no, like, come on, like, we shouldn't be, just supporting some like, American company and encouraging this kind of like everything's just on my phone and it's so convenient. And I was like, yeah, I agree. I see your point. And so we got off the train, got outside, and sure enough, you step outside the train station, and like immediately, like 10 dudes just come up to you and are like surrounding you and are shouting numbers at you and like, where do you want to go? Like,
Wow.
and you're just kind of like, okay, we're in it now, And as it happened, on most occasions it all plays out fine, but on this occasion, we agreed a price, and we put our bags into this tuk-tuk, and then he takes off from the train station, and obviously it's like 1, 2 a.m. now, so it's a little bit more sketchy than during the day. And then he turns around to us and he like names a different price. And like I saw red because I was just like, what the hell? Like, so start like kind of trying not to shout at the guy, but definitely getting annoyed. And eventually, yeah, like Una we like grabbed hold of our backpacks and we were just basically like, stop, 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 and like got out. And then he's like apologizing to us, and then his friends are coming over and all this stuff. So it's kind of chaos, but it's kind of like, okay, this is kind of what you sign up for a little bit. But at no point did I turn around to my wife and be like, why did we not just take the Uber? Like I said, let's take the Uber, like, because what's the gain there from sort of being like, she had the right intentions there. She was, like, yeah, like let's try and, yeah, like just be part of it and do the India experience. Like don't try and like hack your way out of the inconveniences.
Right. Did you guys
But yeah,
from there? Did you end up going Uber? Because honestly, that's really big of you. In that convenience, I want to kill the driver, and I'd be like, "Can we get an Uber now, please, please?"
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I think in the end we did. Yeah, in the end we did because we were kind of like, okay, like there's a point now where we're like a little bit away from the train station, so where there are other people, and so it was kind of like a slightly risky situation that we ended up in that scenario. And yeah, there's merits to both approaches, right? But
yeah, for
in the
sure.
end, we did get an Uber, and it took a little bit of hassle because like he'd stopped like one street over, so we had to go and find him and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, the kind of moral of the story is like, yeah, of course these things are going to happen. There's no point blaming the other person for their decision.
Right.
I think who you travel with is super important. The first trip the first big trip that I ever did was with a good buddy of ours, Amar. He's the founder of Gap Year Escape, and actually I think he's rebranded it recently. But yeah, but he sort of suggested that we do this trip from like Canada all the way down to Antarctica over the course of 12 months. And I think the whole trip we only had really one fallout, and it was quite funny because, it always happens when you're tired, right? And so we would be like on this bus for, I don't know, 10 hours or something like that, and the bus pulls in the middle of nowhere, and I was kind of the one that was, yeah, trying to speak Spanish and trying to kind of do a lot of the coordination and a lot of the like, make the plans, talk to people and stuff. I really enjoyed it. I really loved trying to learn some Spanish through it. So anyway, we're exhausted, and the bus pulls up in the middle of nowhere. We've no idea if we're in the right place. We get off the bus, and the driver's obviously like, yeah, like where's the piece of paper for your bags, right? The number for your bag and stuff. So I'm like rummaging around and like, I'm looking everywhere and stuff. I just can't find it. And I'm like, oh, I can't find it. And the driver's getting annoyed, and he won't give us our bags and stuff. And Amar turns to me and goes, "This is why I told you to have a wallet." And I just flipped at him. I was like, dude, I'm the one that's talking to everybody. I'm the one that's like organized everything. I found us this bus. I like,
Oh my God. Yeah, that'll set off a bomb.
for sure. But it's like, it's classic. I don't know if it's the same in Italy or certainly in Greece. Like, probably here in Portugal as well. It certainly like seems to be a Mediterranean thing, but it kind of doesn't matter if you just go off on each other. Like 20 minutes later, you're best friends again.
Yeah, we
uh,
we were like that on our trip for
yeah, yeah.
for sure, because and we were honestly we were drinking our way through Like it was 6 weeks, and I think we drank it was brutal. Like it was super fun, but there was like a couple of days where like you're like I need a 3 days of not drinking, please, and then we
Yeah,
go have
yeah.
3 bottles of wine. Like but even to your point about the Uber drive in India, because even if it's like you like, I'm sure she even felt, you know, even with you not saying anything, being like, oh shit, maybe we should have taken the Uber. So it's even like for you to say like, you know, you had the right idea, you know,
Mhm.
like even though we're gonna take the Uber, like, you know, to kind of like even coach that so the person doesn't feel the idea of blame or fault for these things, because you're right, like sometimes a lot of good intentions end up turning to shit,
Right.
and that's really hard actually. Before we get into more like solo versus group travel, the one trip from that story, which is like my real like this one of the scariest moments I've had ever traveling. And so how there's a long lead up, but long story short is that we decided, instead of going directly to where my family is and having them pick us up from a train station, we decided that because my friend didn't want to stay in a hotel and pay 70 euros, because he's like, why we're gonna just stay in a hotel in Florence and sleep 7 hours, because we got there at 11. And I'm like, what are we gonna do? We'll go to Padova right now. We'll get in later and we'll find a hotel there, and then we'll surprise them. And I'm like, okay, let's just go. So we get on the train from Florence to Padova, and on the way there, we're in the middle of writing our like journals that we were keeping during that trip, and we're like, shit, we're not going to get in until 1:30. Like all the hostels are going to be closed, and this is 2003 2004. So there is no iPhone. Like I can't even go online. Like we have a Lonely Planet guide we're carrying with us, and so we get into Padova and we look around, and it's dark. It's dark everywhere. We don't know where we are. We again, there are no Google Maps. And so we're like, you know what? Let's just sleep in the train station. And so we're like, okay, we're gonna but it started pouring rain, and they closed the train station. So they're like, guys, you need to get the fuck out of here, the police officers. And we're like, okay. So we covered our backpacks up. We took out our ponchos. We're walking around. My first idea was like, let's go find a church and see if we can wake somebody up. I'm gonna go sleep in a church. And it's like, okay. So we start banging on the doors. Church is all empty. They want nothing to do with us. I guess you got to be like a young boy to get someone to let you in. I don't know if that's how it works. But we find one hotel, and they're like, that'll be 130 euros. And I'm like, I'm in. I don't give a shit. My friend's like, I'm not paying 130 euros. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're walking then. And and then so all the way up to here was his fault, and then moving forward it becomes mine, because we're walking, and we're walking. It's I don't know, 3 a.m. now, and we find a courtyard inside an apartment building where there's a nice patch of grass that we could sleep on the grass. And he's like, let's just stay here. And in the morning, we'll find a taxi and we'll figure this all out. We both know we're fucked now. And I'm like, you know what? No. I go, because you know what? I think that we can walk from Padova to Castelfranco and we can be there at 8 a.m. and we can at least surprise my parents. I thought we could walk 3 hours with these backpacks and make it. But the reason why I'm so stupid is that from Padova to Castelfranco is like a 40-minute drive. And I thought that we could just walk it. So we're walking, our backs are killing us. We found a shopping cart, we put our backpacks in. We're walking with these things like the night is getting dumber, and we don't even know how dumb it's getting. At some point, we're at a gas station and we're just sitting down because we're so mentally and physically exhausted. And we're sitting down, and all of a sudden a car pulls in. And we're sitting down on this stoop, and the car pulls in. There's two guys, and they're looking straight at us, and the lights are basically on us. And I have my glasses on at that point. I was wearing glasses. I was like, and the guys, they look at us in the car and they take off, and we're like, okay, that was weird. And we're just standing there still, and then they come back again, and one guy gets out of the car and he goes, "Where are you guys from?" Because he sees us with our backpacks. And I'm saying in the best Italian I had at that time was like, "Oh, we're from Castelfranco. We're just going see our cousins. We're just walking through." And the guys just stop. They don't say anything, and then they drive away again. And at that point, we looked at each other and we're like, okay, this just got a little bit more scary. So like, he pulls out like a Swiss Army knife. I have like a corkscrew between my fingers. Like, I'm gonna try to pop somebody in the eye. And we keep,
If shit hits the fan, I'm gonna open a bottle of wine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My last rites. And so, we're walking, and then 10 minutes later, we see the car come back again. And this time they're on the other side of the road, and they're kind of and they're staring us down. And so and there was a median between the lanes, and so as soon as the car got past the median, I grabbed my friend by his backpack and I told him, let's cross the street. So they can't actually pull the car in front of us, and we'll have a chance to just fucking get out of there. And so we crossed the street. They passed us again, staring at us, but they knew they couldn't cross that big median. And as soon as they went over the bridge, then I told them, let's cross back. And we found a little alley, and we ended up sticking inside of an alley, because in the alley, there's a cafe with a window that went through the back alley into the road. So we could see these guys going back and forth looking for us. And so we ended up staying in this alley, and we kind of lost our minds a little bit. Like, because like we weren't sleeping. We were hearing different noises. We were super paranoid. We got maybe like 15 minutes sleep between the two of us, because we wanted to stay alert in case these guys come and find us in an alley and we're backed into a corner. And at 6 a.m., we ended up finding a bus into Castelfranco Veneto, and then we ended up walking again another 45 minutes, which is that was the dumbest part of the whole thing, if I'm being honest. And we got to my aunt's winery that you've been to, and they saw us there at 8 a.m. and they're supposed to pick us up at 11, like an hour away. And they're like, what the fuck are you guys doing here? Like, how did you even get here? And so all I could manage to say in Italian was, we slept on the ground. I need to go to sleep. And then they sent us to our room, and then and then they laughed at us for the next week that we were there. But honestly, I don't think I've ever been that scared in my whole life. I'm like, if these guys show up with a knife in this alley, we're gonna have to fight to the death. Like,
Oh man.
it's like this is the equivalent of you guys nearly dying in the woods.
Oh man. You still friends?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. We try not to travel together now, because we'll probably get each other killed. Oh my god! But
That's funny.
I'd like to go between the benefits of solo and group travel, because a lot of people, I think, group travel is the default, but all the people I know that have done solo travel are huge fans of it. Although I see some diminishing returns at some point. So I'd love to hear if you've had any experience between the two.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think yeah, the only time I got to do, I definitely haven't done much solo travel. The one time I did get to do it was in Japan, which is probably one of the tougher places for solo travel because not a lot of people speak English. So we were in Japan, and a buddy of mine had met a Japanese girl in I think it was Tokyo, and we were kind of chatting, and he was like, "I think I want to go and hang out with her in Tokyo." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, go for it." And then I was like, "Okay, the hell am I gonna do?" And I had this idea to sort of take the train. They've got these amazing trains there, and I took the train and went down to the island of Yakushima, which is off the southern coast. And I was like, oh, I think I looked in the guidebook, and I was like, I think I can do a hike here. And I kind of went on my own. I went to the tourist office and stuff, and they couldn't speak much English, but from what I gathered, there was a bus that at the other end of the hike. So you do the hike, and then at the other end, you can sleep in this mountain hut. And then at the other end, you hike down, and then there's a bus, and it comes at this time, and they'd written down the time. And I was like, okay, I think I've got it. But yeah, it ended up being an experience that to this day I think about so much, and I really appreciate having had it so much. And
Wow.
it rained the entire 2 days of this hike nonstop. But it was amazing because I was the only like Western person that I saw the whole time. I didn't speak kind of a handful of words to a couple of Japanese people that were there that could speak a handful of English. Slept in this mountain hut in my like soaking wet,
What?
everything. And but yeah, during the hike, it was just unbelievably beautiful. It was these like misty forests, and at one point I just heard like thumping sounds like on the ground, and I was like looking around, like, what the hell is going on? And this group of like, I don't know, 30, 40 like monkeys, these huge monkeys just came like running past me, like all around me. And the way they were running is they were like thumping their like arms on the ground, and that's how they'd like run along. Like
Wow.
it was unbelievable. And as fast as they came, they were gone, and I was just there again on my own, and just like in these amazing surroundings. And I was like, what did I just, see? This is just unbelievable. So it was cool. It was cool. I was really glad I did it. And it's just quite funny as well because then on the way back, I think I was maybe meeting up with my buddy again towards the end of the trip, and on the way back, and I just hadn't spoken to anybody in 4 days, and I saw like one Western person. And I just had no objection to going straight up to them and just like, having a conversation with them because I was just so excited to like exchange a couple of sentences with somebody.
Right.
Whereas normally, you wouldn't do that on the London Underground. But I was just so excited that I was like, this is somebody that probably speaks English.
Wow.
Yeah,
I never heard that story because that's definitely what we would call forced solo travel.
yeah, yeah, sure,
But
yeah,
like
definitely.
yeah, that's even yeah, you have such a high tolerance for like discomfort on those hikes. Like I'm okay with a little bit of rain, but you just like you slept in your wet clothes and you said it like no big deal, and I'm just thinking like how awful that would feel. And so like what did you even do the next day? Like what do you think of when you're going through that experience that like every day it's raining? Like you don't have a new change of clothes. It doesn't sound like you had a poncho that you could have used. So what?
I did have a waterproof jacket, but it like within an hour of it raining nonstop, like there's only so much a waterproof jacket can do, right? So, uh, I think like I'm definitely more prepared these days. Try to pick my gear a bit more carefully and try to, but I think yeah, you just kind of. I guess it's just I just value so much the wonder of the nature that you get to see that like the trade-off of like the discomfort.
Yeah.
The calculation makes sense to me kind of thing. And yeah, like I think my stuff dried off a little bit during the night in the hut, and then I had like changed into a clean shirt and then took off again, and then it just started raining again. It was just soaked again. I was just kind of like, oh well, this is it. I think it was just a bit the only thing I was nervous about was A, getting lost, which we did on Mount Fuji, and B in this particular case was like that I haven't understood the lady at the tourist office and there is no bus and I've no idea how to get like back to the hostel where I was staying. But yeah, when that bus turned up, it was marvelous. Um,
Wow.
but yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, but it was yeah. I was so happy when that bus arrived, and it was just so wonderful to see, and it was just yeah. I think it's one of yeah. I think for me is the trade-off is there, where you get to have these amazing experiences, but at some points you might be a bit uncomfortable. But that's kind of where some of the best travel experiences come from, right? Like you try and plan this ultimate trip where everything goes right, but then kind of sometimes when stuff goes wrong, that's one of the most
Right.
life experiences and kind of funny stories that come out of it.
Yeah, because I think even like people avoid solo travel because I think a lot of people are scared to make these decisions and think that they can't. And like for anyone listening to this that hasn't done a solo trip, like even if you just go somewhere on your own for a weekend, I think it's like super valuable, especially if it's in a place that you can go explore different things and make decisions. Like if you're, coming to Barcelona or if you're going to Rome or these places that like you can go and make your decisions of all the marvelous things to see and you choose the things to do. I just think it's super empowering because I think a lot of people have these. I think codependency is too strong, but like we're humans. Like we want to be accepted by our group. We want to get along. And so if you're in a group with, even more than one person, you want to make sure that you're not being a dick, that you're not saying like, no, we all have to go here, or I'm refusing to, like you want people to get along where it's, and so I think if you go on your own and you can make decisions for yourself, like I personally find that it's really, really empowering. Where I think there's diminishing returns is between, this was 2017, I think in between Portugal and going to Japan, I decided to just do like one city a week on my own and through Europe, and I did like Florence, Rome, Berlin, and I had people that were meeting me at different spots or people I knew in those cities I could hang out with, but like I didn't get to see them all the time. And so after even like the third week, I was really like, okay, this is getting to be a bit much. Like I'm okay having a solo dinner. I'm okay taking a stroll by myself for a while. But that amount of time, I was kind of like, no, I'd like to have a banter and have a little bit more company on this one. So I think it depends, maybe how long you've been around people before that trip. Like if you're a school teacher, I'm sure you could go for a month and be okay because you don't have to hear all those voices and all the time. Or maybe if you're in a home that is like super, super chaotic. But for me, the few days of just going and making decisions on your own and exploring and not having to worry about anyone, maybe especially a good example is my mom when she came to Barcelona in 2011 and she was visiting me and a friend, but because he and I were often doing some of our stuff and we would do stuff with her on other days, but if for the first time in her life, she wasn't a daughter of a family going on a vacation, and she wasn't the mother of a family going on vacation where she's got to take care of her husband and her kids. And so like, I've never seen a woman, of that age with that much energy. Like she has energy normally, but she was going like in a good way. She was going nuts with energy. She was like walking different parts of the city, talking to strangers on the street, like having this joyous, momentous occasion because she could finally just focus on herself, which a lot of times I don't think any of us get to do enough of.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, yeah, it's fascinating to think of. Yeah, my mum doing a trip on her own. It's so hard to picture. I think, yeah, I guess sometimes you just forget that it was this whole person before they started a family, and then you change so much when you start a family, and then yeah, that's wonderful to hear your mum kind of rediscover herself in a way and find that energy and stuff. That's really cool. I never thought about that concept.
Yeah, neither did I at all until I saw it. Like she was like the energy of 1,000 suns, and like even now she was here for a month last year, and she's just really happy to be on her own, and to like, so we'll go do a museum, but then she'd be happy that she can just go and buy something or go to a local supermarket and just do all these things on her own and buy stuff like it's like, I think it really probably echoes the feeling I had the first time I went to Europe, even with my friend, that you weren't beholden to a bunch of different, like your parents asking you where you're going to go, why are you going to do that, why'd you make that decision, you're like, I just made the decision, just let me make the decision.
Yeah.
And I think these things are really tough because even like you said, destination and goals, as we started saying, that like if you're on a trip with a bunch of people as well, sometimes it's also hard to like have these sorts of reflective ideas if someone, let's say one person's more drama prone, or one person's more complaining, or all of these things. And I think it's maybe even why last year's trip to Italy was so great for you and I and your friend and our friend Dave, is because like we were all just happy to be there. Like there's really no agenda. We're all there just to enjoy each other's company and the environment. Whereas like, maybe because we're a little bit older now and we're not 20 years old trying to like go spend a week with a girl in Japan, even though you went with a buddy of yours. That is crazy. Like this really speaks to your temperament. If I went to Japan, so I don't know if everyone knows where Japan and Britain are. But it's not a close trip. If my friend were to do that, I would want to hang him. and you're like, you know what? I'm going to go spend 5 days in the rain.
I suppose when you sum it up like that.
But the best part is that like you had a like kind of like a I don't want to say it like a spiritual experience, but you had like this really profound experience on
Right.
that trip, which is amazing.
Yeah. It's interesting. I guess the only thing that you control is your reaction to these things, right? Like ultimately, my body was, he was like, I want to go back, spend some time with this girl, and I suppose at that moment you can either go, what the hell, we're here on this trip together, and you can turn it into this big thing, or you can kind of just embrace it and be like, okay, I change your plan, and I'm gonna go do this other thing. Um, yeah, all you can control is your reaction to things. And I think you get a lot more out of, things where you choose to react in a like, okay, I only see this as positive and I'm just gonna run with it basically. But yeah, I don't know if this is just stuff that you kind of just pick up during life, but yeah, for sure it's yeah. I don't know what else to say about it,
Yeah,
really.
no, honestly, I really applaud your disposition on that. Like, I think in that scenario, well, I guess depends how old I would have been. Like, in my 20s, I definitely would have been like, what the fuck? But yeah, but now I can definitely see you're like, especially now that I've done a bunch of solo trips. So like I think maybe a lot of that reaction for me younger would have been like, oh shit, well, okay, I guess what am I going to do? Whereas now, like,
Right.
growing up mostly as an only child for, most of my formative years and all the trips I've done, now I would just be like, okay, well, like, at what point are we meeting up again? And then I would get on
Mm,
TripAdvisor or whatever and be like, okay, well, where am I gonna
mm,
go find the fun? But
for sure.
yeah,
I
even at
guess
your
these
age,
things,
that was an
yeah.
early trip, right? Like, you were like, what, in your 20s?
Yeah, early 20s. I think, yeah, I guess it's interesting because it still applies. I guess what the thing was about that moment is it forces you to face something about yourself, right? You're like, am I going to be kind of ultimately why are you getting annoyed at your friend? And you're getting annoyed at your friend because it's like, okay, now I'm going to have to go and come up with my own thing, and I don't have the confidence, and maybe it's like holding up a bit of a mirror to yourself, and it's sort of showing that, yeah, you're suddenly going to have to be outside of your comfort zone, and you weren't prepared for that. But I
Right.
think only good things can come from sort of reacting to that positively and embracing being outside of the comfort zone and going and having an amazing experience, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, because I think it's our expectations of what a trip should be, and then it's changing, and so all of a sudden, the fear, the offense of like, why is this person abandoning this trip that we've had together? And it's
Mm,
really, you're right. It really charges a lot of feelings that you have in yourself, which with a lot of interpersonal sort of things.
mm,
And so
right.
I've really worked hard to try to adopt more of that as I've gotten older, to like, on any sort of trips. But
Mm,
it's really hard. Even sometimes I'll have a reaction to something, either a trip or otherwise, and I have to really like sit down and have like an inner monologue with myself to be like,
yeah.
this is how I feel. Why do I feel like this? Do I want to feel like this? And if not, well, how do I want to feel? And then I try to mirror that and go that direction. But that's taken a lot of years, because before it was just kind of like reaction, okay, offense,
Mm,
fuck this, or what, like,
yeah.
or whatever. But I think you're totally right that once you have more confidence in yourself, and like being like, what do I want to get out of this reaction? Like, if you
Mm,
try to control your friend and have him stay with you, like that's not going to be a great rest of that trip. Like, he's going to be
yeah.
thinking about this girl, or he's going to tell you to go fuck yourself, and he's going to go anyway, and then the situation's worse, and he's already there. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
think you're totally right. That's definitely the better way to go.
But I do admire people that perhaps, yeah, like you said, where you have to kind of work on this reaction. I admire people that have been able to identify, okay, this is my natural reaction, and I need to work to change that, and I'm like prepared to put in that work to change that, because it's one thing me turning around and be like, yeah, I didn't mind whatever. I'll go and travel on my own for a bit, and because it's that didn't take that much from me. That didn't take that much growth from me. But for somebody else that doesn't have that reaction instinctively, and to work on that, that's, yeah. I mean, that to me is really impressive. And certainly there's own areas in my life where there's things where I do still react in a certain way, and I wish it was different, and I have to work on that long term. It's not the kind of thing that you can kind of click your fingers and do differently.
Right. Well,
So yeah, I do admire people that put that work in.
because I was going to say, like, what you're saying is like, to go even off travel for a second, like that part is so difficult to, like, let's say you react in a certain way and you don't want to, because part of that is like some of us don't even accept our anger, because anger can be helpful. It tells us like we're in danger, or our boundaries are being violated, and all these things. And especially for women, I've heard this to be true, that like they're taught that they can't be angry, that they have to accommodate, and all of these things. So I think it's really hard to know, okay, I'm feeling like this, and if your first instinct is to, like, I shouldn't feel like this, the other one is like, oh, should I feel like all these questions are so difficult, because you're like, oh, maybe I'm angry for a reason. Like maybe someone is doing something that's not good for me. And like, to do these cognitive loopholes, like you kind of want to take a nap after 10 minutes in this space, because you really have to like try to connect to like exactly how you feel, what the situation is. And then if someone that is close to you is doing something that's violating those boundaries and making you angry, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, how do I bring this up without it turning into a thing? And then some people have fear to even bring up feedback because of how it's related. Like I think actually coming full circle back to travel, I think that's why you really learn who you can and cannot travel with sometimes. Because if some feedback can't be given, like everyone's going to be dick at some point, when you're traveling or doing whatever. But like, if someone can, like you and Namar, for example, you guys can blow up at each other. You're like, why the fuck do you say that? You like da 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 da, and then 2 days later, you guys are totally fine again, right? Like the element of repair after these sorts of arguments, like really just goes back to interpersonal relationship and any relationship. So maybe the challenge of travel is like having relationships that are under, I guess, not constant stress, but like under like a unstable environment.
For sure, yeah. I think as well, I think in your, certainly in your teens and your early 20s, you're just holding on to your ego, and your ego is so like, vital to you, and you don't want anything that's gonna like come close to touching your ego, and I think you start to maybe lose that a little bit the older you get, where you're like, hold on, this person's giving me this feedback not because they want to attack my ego, and so my reaction is I have to defend my ego, and I have to, that they're wrong and my ego is right, and I'm in the right here. You start to sort of be able to let go of that ego a little bit and start to take stuff on board. Yeah, it's funny because I've got a friend of mine, and we were playing paddle. So I'm really disappointed that you said you're playing more tennis rather than more paddle. And we were playing paddle, and he was just getting like super frustrated, and he was getting super annoyed. And then the person on the other side, on the other team, was like, "Why are you getting annoyed?" Like, and like, why are you being angry and stuff like that. And he was kind of like, "Just let me be angry." Like at some point, you kind of just gotta like, if someone's like, let somebody kind of work through that emotion. I don't think there's necessarily a reaction of like, all anger is bad. Universally, all anger is bad. It's like, maybe just say, rather than saying that to the guy, just say like, oh, are you okay? You want to like chill for a couple of minutes? Like, I don't know, just give somebody an opportunity to be like, you're expressing something, and I'm not going to take it personally and like throw it back kind of thing. I'm just going to let you like have some space to work through that anger, And certainly, yeah, I think that the Southern European attitude of the Mediterranean of like, let stuff blow up and then everything's smooth 20 minutes later. I definitely experienced that a few times. So it's quite entertaining, and maybe a healthy approach in some ways.
Right. Yeah. Actually, it's really interesting that you bring, because I have two racket related stories for that like maybe it's that's where everyone gets angry.
Wait, are they paddle related?
One is.
Okay, I'll listen to them then.
Because what you said makes sense, because like it's different if someone's directing their anger at you
Right.
Or if it's
Right.
just around you because they're being angry at themselves.
That's a really important point. Yeah.
And even at that point, if someone's really like hating themselves and hitting themselves with a racket, well, I think we've crossed the threshold. But so one was I played a guy in tennis on Wednesday, and honestly, it felt like a Wimbledon final. Like it was like 2 hours nonstop. Every point was like 20 hits. Like after 4 games, we were dying. We were exhausted. And like during that, like because there were such long rallies, when one of us would fuck up, like we would scream and it would be angry and be like, fuck, like, and we'd be so fired up. And then like the people beside us, they'd look over and be like, sorry guys. And even they were like, we get it.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it. It's got to go somewhere. Let it out. And so we were having a laugh, even like the two courts beside us. But the flip side was I was playing paddle with a few friends, and one guy. So is there a rule that like when you're playing, your partner always has to be responsible for having 2 balls? Always? Like, is that one of the rules?
Oh, I think that's more just like decorum, right? It's just like trying to be kind of gentlemanly about it, right? Where you're
Right.
like trying to, keep an eye out and make sure that they've got what they need, sort of thing. But I don't necessarily think it's a rule. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I never heard of this rule, and we were playing the whole game. We were like, we were nearing the end of the set, and things were like going fine, but it was getting quite competitive between us. And the other guy in the other team, he'd hit a bad shot, and he just fucking lost it. He was so angry, and then I think I was serving, and I asked for can someone toss me a ball? And I guess we had none on our side, and the guy kept losing it. He's like, why the fuck don't you have these balls ready? You should have these balls. And I stopped him like, don't get angry at me because you hit a shitty shot. Like, that's not how this is going to work. But then he started saying like, yeah, but the Catalan people I play around here, you should see the shit that they give me. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but what are we talking about? Like so we're gonna roll this toxic behavior downhill. Like, tell me how this rule works. We'll try to respect it, but I don't come to paddle to get yelled at by my friends. right? And so like those two different experiences are kind of like the good and the bad for getting angry at anyone. And I get it. Like, it was a super competitive game. Like, you know what I mean? But like, man, it's so tough. Do you see a lot of that in paddle?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, people get frustrated. I mostly get frustrated at myself, and yeah, you're your own toughest critic, I think sometimes. You don't practice a lot of forgiveness to yourself when shots go wrong. But yeah. So now when I see it in others, I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. Like, I get super frustrated sometimes as well, and I try to work on that. I see it as like a nice opportunity to work on that, like, self-criticism and that anger that does come up. It's just like an opportunity to kind of work through it. But yeah, it does make for some pretty funny moments, and most of the time people like laugh it off like 20 minutes later, and it's like, I get it. We've all had like bad days where we're frustrated and stuff. Like, you don't know what's going on in that person's life in that moment in time. There's one guy that we play with quite often, and yeah, he sort of, in the past, he's had a really bad temper, and he's got a daughter with Down syndrome. Like, I can only imagine, like, what he's going through day to day and stuff like that. So you got to kind of acknowledge that there's probably stuff going on in people's lives that you don't have full visibility into as well. So, but yeah,
what a huge piece of context to, like, for you to understand that, like, all right, like, he's getting something out, let him get it out.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like you say, like you could, there's definitely degrees to this. Like, you can't be like shouting at other people when there's kind of limits to what you could do and what is healthy.
Right.
But certainly some expression of anger, I think, shouldn't be necessarily translated to, oh, like, this is a super bad thing. Everybody should be a Zen Buddhist monk 24 hours a day,
Yeah, and it's really really hard. I think that's why like travel can bring out these sorts of like outbursts or whatever, because you're dealing with all these other things that you have. Like I think like definitely in my 20s I had a big anger problem. Like I had to really like check myself, and like over time and therapy and things like that, I've learned like, okay, I'm in this space now. I'm, let's chill out, and in an hour I'll be okay. But
Yeah.
again, that takes a lot of time, and on the court, like I try to modulate when it's helpful and when it's not, and when it's not helpful. But
Yeah.
it's funny, I guess, to like get to a point to bring us back to travel, like when, because we've discussed a lot of things that in our travels I think we both learned about like ourselves, about our our relationships and people we've taken these trips with. Like, how do you integrate these things into your life afterwards? Like when you've come on these trips, like even if you could share, if anything came from this recent gigantic trip that you had, are there any like things that you realize that you're trying now to integrate into your day-to-day life?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So there is one business example comes to mind, and it's pertinent because I remember I read a lot of business books at the start, like early in my 20s and my late teens and stuff like that. I was really into business books, and I remember reading about this idea that you should work on the business, not in the business, right? And conceptually, I like understood it, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. And I was thinking about it, and I hadn't really started a business at that point, so I couldn't really, physically apply it. But I kind of took in that idea and internalized it. But now I'm 35 years old, so like 15 years have passed. I've been running my own business for 10 plus years. And while I was away, I was like, oh my God, I've been working I've been working in the business rather than on the business. The day to day has taken up 100% of my work time. There's
Wow.
no time to work on the business as opposed to in it. So it's quite funny to think that yeah, you took on board this lesson in your early 20s, then you completely ignored it for 15 years. And I sort of said to my friends at various points, I said, I've had this idea that we could work with coaches, that we could, do these different things, partner with gyms, etc. I had all these kind of big ideas. But I kind of realized I was having these conversations with my friends, and like 12 months would have passed, and I would have taken no action towards those ideas. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm so consumed by the business. And that realization really came to light during my time in India and Nepal, and taking a couple of months away from doing a sabbatical and taking a couple of months away from work.
Right.
I was able to sort of finally think about that idea and come back with a full intention of implementing it. And I told myself, I'm not going to be able to instantly make this change, but I can make a start on it, the minute I get back. And I sort of made sure to, journal about it and take notes about it, so I can kind of come back to like, these were some of the things and these were some of the takeaways that I had, and like how much progress have I made towards making these changes.
Wow.
But while also acknowledging that yeah, it's going to take time. I'm not going to come back, click my fingers, and everything's going to be totally different. That's not how it works.
Right.
It's a work in progress, right? So yeah, for me now I'm trying to spend less time on day-to-day activities that I was doing inside the business, and through various changes in the business, try and free up my time so that I can take some of these bigger bets on some of these bigger strategies that might really grow things in a better direction. But I sort of, yeah, there was a big difference between being aware of this issue over 12 months ago, and then finally having some time away from the business to actually think it through and actually like come back with a sort of fresh slate, and then change things as I sort of see fit. Because that separation was just enormous for having that clarity, basically.
Really interesting. Wow. Yeah. Because I guess we can learn these things, and I learned this honestly so many times through the years. Like not that same lesson, but I've learned that like I can learn something and read something and see my friend go through something, and I will know that yes, this is the way that I should do this. And I will just not do it until
Yeah.
I am in a similar scenario, and then it's like all the blood rushes to that part of the brain that can accept that this is now a hard truth, and that I should do that. And I don't know, like, even after our trip to Italy last year, I came back and I had like a really rush of energy to go and like, okay, I'm going to do these three things. That's where I decided to do the podcast, to do the certification for business brokerage, and then also something else that, and I did all three things. Like the vegan bar I was going to do, I ended up putting that business aside and something else, but like it's led me into really good places that like it really is hard to get that day to day, because you're thinking of what's in front of you opposed to like what's on the horizon. So like we seem to keep coming back to like just to get out of your day to day, to like get some perspective, and especially like to be in a, I guess, a positive environment, like you traveling with your wife and doing all these fun things, and having an elephant beside you in traffic. Like I think that will like maybe ground us back to like the bigger picture, that life isn't just our to-do list. Life isn't this highway to hell of productivity. Like it really is like, just having adventure, and then we get to see what we really want. And I feel like it's so hard. Like I wish everyone could have that perspective to travel a little bit, and to like go and do something on your own, or take a friend that like has your best interests at heart, and you guys go and do this sort of fun trip. So what's some of the next trips you'd like to do? Like something, is there anything on the horizon, or right now you're like, I'm so out traveled right now, then
Yeah. I mean, we've got so later today I'm flying to the UK, and then we're obviously we've been meeting up in Italy for a week of sort of nature and hiking and hanging out and stuff like that, which I'm really looking forward to. And eating, too many pistachio-based treats, of course, the most important thing. And this world's best pasta that you were telling me about as well, which I've been kind of having food dreams about. So that trip, and then we're going to South Africa with my mum to celebrate her 60th birthday. But again, say for example that South Africa trip, I'm sure it would be amazing, but I'm not kind of going there necessarily with the intention of like thinking through life and thinking through goals and things like that. It has a different purpose. It's like just to get to spend that quality time with family is super, super nice. So yeah, it's not like every trip has to be looking for life breakthroughs. But
I think I didn't think you were saying that to begin with. I thought it was just like, this is just what happens with travel. Like if you're not going and drinking yourself to death, then like
yeah.
I think these thoughts just naturally start percolating. Like I'm sure, especially I really want to go to South Africa, so I'm super pumped to hear of your experience when you go, because I think like you're just looking at the natural world, you're looking at animals in their habitat, living their lives, and the beauty there. I think just changes something in our brain, that it will properly make capitalism subservient to the natural world, and you start rethinking, I think, what is important. So I don't know, I think it's any trip of value has that.
For sure, yeah. And I think it is, if possible, trying to, I'm definitely guilty of this in the past, where I would kind of travel and I'd see no problem with like having my laptop with me and checking into work and stuff like that. And I kind of just saw it like, this is the way, this is what but definitely in the past couple of years, certainly I've tried to be more like, no, this is like real holiday time, and I'm not going to open my laptop, and because then you just don't get that separation from the day to day. And it is a work in progress. I know it's not possible for everybody to just take 2 weeks off, not look at their phone, not look at their laptop. I know that is a huge luxury. And I mean, it's taken the best part of 10 years to kind of reach this point in business. But it was a sort of change in perspective. And I think as well, seeing that the company was fine without me, and the team that I have in place, they were able to run things fine without me, gave me that kind of confidence. I do think it was such a gift that my team gave us, to be able to to take that proper time away and not worry about what's going on in the business, I think made a huge difference. So I think, yeah, that's something that now we're actually going to look to offer to the people that we work with as well in the team, where when you've worked for the company for a certain amount of years, you can take a sabbatical and you can take some paid leave and stuff like that. Because I think it is such a gift to have that time off, you know. And I'm so, you know, as Europeans, you know, we're so horrified when we hear about in America, you know, you get 15 days holiday a year, and it's like, dude, like you need some time off to have these breakthroughs and to think through things. And yeah, there's a time and a place for working crazy hard, and then there's a lot to be gained as well from taking that step back and a bit of separation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the point of like, even to like not think through life, just to live your life.
Yeah.
Like you hear those memes of like, you know, Europeans taking 6 weeks vacations. Americans are like, oh yeah, I had brain surgery, but end of the week I'll be back in the office.
Yeah.
No problem, no problem. And I think like, just like again, you're British born, but have like your family, a lot of your family in Greece, and I have like, you know, Canada and Italy, where Canada is much more socialized, socialist than the U.S. But even Canadian holidays aren't great. But there is an element that I've always seen in Italian life of people just enjoying their life in their small towns, and that like work is important, and work is something you should do. You should try to give back, or something you should be good at, and you know there is a value to having work in your life, but it shouldn't be every part of your life where it just seems like, I don't know if it's more North American or really still American, but it seems like work is everything, and then everything else is kind of secondary. Like even like family, in a lot of respects, you see a lot of people like, nope, but work comes first. Like I don't need to spend any time with my kids after they were born. Like the wife can do that, and the man can just go straight back to work. And like, you know, like I have a friend in Canada who's about to take, I think, 12 months off for his second kid, and it's almost fully paid for by his job and partly by the government. And he's super happy because he did a similar thing with his first kid. And he's like, I can't imagine my wife dealing with all this stuff on her own. You know, so then what? I have to go to work and then feel shitty because she's feeling shitty. And then, like, if she's not in a good mood, I'm not going to be in a good mood. Everything would just fall apart. And so I can't imagine the amount of stress that some Americans might be that don't have that paid leave available. Not to mention if the mother can only stay home for a week or two, like that sounds like a complete nightmare. So with travel, I think it's like, it's just kind of just for us. It's become like, it's become a bit like breathing. That like I don't need to do it all the time, but a few times a year, I need to go and get new air into my brain and into my lungs. It makes such a massive difference.
Definitely. Yeah.
But I want to say, you know, thanks for coming on and chatting about this. I think we could have done travel stories for another 45 minutes. But always a pleasure. You're the first repeat guest. So maybe we'll find a third in the future. And I'll send you an external mic directly to your house. So thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And everybody out there, go get Fit Men Cook app or the Meal Prep Pro app and change your eating habits for the better.
Thanks, man. Cheers. Bye-bye.
So thanks for listening to No More, No Less. I appreciate the time you spent with me today. So please subscribe and rate the show if you enjoyed it. It'll help me create more amazing content and get that next little bit of validation that I so deeply crave. If you did enjoy it, well, that sucks. But to make sure, I think you should listen to my next 10 episodes and then decide. I mean, come on. Rome was not built in a day. I'm just getting warmed up here, guys. So thanks again. See you next time.